right, now I can hear you.
Okay, great, great. Okay, I see you got the hat, you got the logo up in the corner.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good to go. Okay. So let me ask you this just before we get started. So I had asked you to come onto my podcast. Obviously, I'm happy to be on your podcast too. We could do it both ways. Do you want to interview me? I should interview you. How do you want to do this?
No, do you have a link for your podcast? A Zoom link that you want me to use?
Well, I would just I wasn't going to give you I was just going to record it, which I think I can if you give me permission to. I can record it.
Yeah, no, this is your podcast.
Okay, great, because I see that you're recording it, so you can
Oh
either
yeah,
give me
it's
permission or you
automatic.
just,
it's automatic. Let me
yeah,
so I
yeah,
I
or you
can
can
just I
send me
can
a
just
link
send
to
this to you after we're done.
yeah, that's just
That
as well.
works.
Yeah, sure. Okay, terrific. So, last time we got to speak for a couple of minutes only. We don't have too much time. But I want to just quickly show you my app and how it works. I
Oh,
started
very
using
cool.
that the other day, and I'm actually working now on putting together a 10-day training program for the app
Oh,
because
that's awesome.
the app is only as good as the training you give with it.
That's right.
So I'm working on that, and I was hoping really to start last Monday, but I couldn't do it. I pushed it off a week, but I don't think I'm going to get it done for this Monday either. I don't want to start it if I'm not ready. You
Yeah,
know, I'm
yeah.
gonna hold off. It's basically the way it's going to work. It's going to, whoever signs up gets an email every day with like a short 10 to 15-minute video, and then they can use the app. It's free. It's free to download. It's free to use. Everything is free now. And then there's a survey that they need to complete that lets us know that we're getting it right. And it runs across 10 days. So it's 5 days a week. It's Monday through Friday, and then Monday through Friday the next week. So it's a 2 week over 10 days system. And it basically teaches the app A to Z. It teaches everything.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you need to share the screen to show me?
I will share the screen right now. Yeah.
I think I have to make you a
Oh,
co-host
yeah.
or something. Hold on.
Yeah, let me do that. You just need to give me permission to share.
Yeah.
Um, okay. All right. So when you log in, this is the first thing that you get. This is a demo class, so these are not real kids. This is the dashboard, and if you have any other classes, it will be listed below here. So this is the demo class, and there are a bunch of different dashboards. We'll go through that afterwards. First, let me show you how you input data. You start a session by tapping here on the apple. You can name the session if you want. So let's call this class Unfold the Soul. That's today's class. It's going to end in an hour. It runs for an hour typically. You can adjust that. There's adjustments for that. Now, the first thing that you do when you start a class, obviously, is you need to make sure that everyone is here, right? If you're not here, it's game over.
Right.
So the first thing we do is take attendance, and everyone is assumed to be here. And you can set this up to mirror your actual class. This is a customizable chart. So if you sit in groups, if you sit in a particular shape around the room, however you sit, you can customize the layout. And everyone is assumed to be here. Whoever is absent, you just tap on them, and that marks that they're absent. So you can very quickly tap on the kids that are absent. When you're done, you tap end attendance, and now you have the option to check homework, go to class, or continue attendance. If you're not done, we're going to go to class. Okay. Now, the idea here is to make all of the data inputs super simple. So if somebody comes late to class, you double tap on them, and now I have the option to either mark them late or if they weren't absent at all. Maybe I made a mistake. So I mark them late, and now they're marked late. But everything is time-stamped. So I'm actually keeping record if people are coming 2 minutes late, 10 minutes late, a half hour late. Those are not the same. Okay, but when we traditionally mark them off in the roll book, late is late.
That's right.
But late is not late.
You're right. Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So now the basic foundation, and I know you're going to love this from what I've seen from your videos that I've seen, is that every kid is entitled to encouragement and positive feedback every day. Okay, it's not a point system. They don't have to earn it. They deserve it. Okay. Now there are kids that don't get it. There's some kids that get more than others. So the reason why some kids are getting more than others is not usually on purpose. There are all different kinds of factors that play into it.
Yep.
And teachers are just overwhelmed, so they don't get to everybody every day.
Right.
So what we do is we have a positive feedback tracker. When you give a kid positive feedback, you swipe up on them. And you'll notice that next to these kids, there's a little meter here.
Yeah.
As a notch, you swipe up, and it keeps track. Every time you give a kid positive feedback, you just swipe up. And now I can look around the room and see which kids haven't gotten or have gotten less. And I can prioritize the kids that have gotten the least positive feedback. This keeps track of the last 2 days of positive feedback. Okay, so when I come in tomorrow, I'm going to see who has gotten the least positive feedback over the last 2 days. I prioritize those kids. So, he's gotten very little. He's gotten very little. He's gotten nothing. He's gotten nothing. And I can go around the room and just encourage kids and give kids positive feedback and keep track of it that way. So I know I'm getting to everybody.
I love that.
Thank you. The next thing is when you're dealing with misbehaviors. Misbehaviors is one of the most exciting parts of teaching that every teacher loves, right? They all come together working with misbehaviors. The problem is that we're not really keeping record of misbehaviors, and we're not really dealing with it in an effective and an efficient way. Most of the time we ignore misbehaviors until it becomes a problem, right? There's a certain kind of mild misbehavior that we kind of look aside, we let it go.
Right.
And we only address those misbehaviors that are really problematic. The problem is that at that point, it's already too late in many cases. And even if it's not too late, it's much more complicated than it would be if you would address it immediately. So we have similarly a very simple way to record a misbehavior. Anytime somebody does something that they're not supposed to do, you swipe down on them. And just like that, you've recorded that they've misbehaved, and it's time-stamped. So you can see later if kids have a tendency, if the kid is misbehaving around a certain time in the day, or if it's preceded by something else, if there's a positive feedback, maybe offsets that. Sometimes when you give a kid a positive feedback, it prevents them from misbehaving.
Right.
So you can see that. We have an amazing dashboard that I'll show you in a minute. And when you record a misbehavior, as with the positive feedback, we have this rating scale. So you can actually rate the intensity of how disruptive this behavior was, because that also matters. If I yell out across the room, it's not the same as if I'm whispering to the kid sitting next to me. You want to be able to measure that. So it's just a swipe and a tap. It's really, really simple. Okay, and this is step one. This is actually the first 3 days. This we're going to go over the first 3 or 4 days of the training program is going to cover this. The first day is just an overview of all the philosophy, and then I take it step by step. The second day, you actually set up your own class. Everybody that downloads the app gets this demo class. So you can practice, outside of your own class. Then you set up your own class, and then you take it into class. And the first day, all you're doing is swiping up. That's it. The
Awesome.
second day,
So is the yellow, is that the misbehavior indicator?
so the yellow, we're going to get to the yellow in a minute. The
Okay.
green is for swiping up. The yellow is actually for academic engagement. That's when I call on somebody and they answer correctly, that's going to show up on yellow. So we're not showing misbehavior on the screen because teachers don't need to be reminded of misbehavior. It's bad enough. We don't need to reinforce that by teachers.
Agreed.
So I don't put any indicator of misbehavior on this screen. There's a dashboard where you could see how many misbehaviors were recorded, but it's not in real time in the classroom. What we do have in addition, though, you'll notice that most of these kids have yellow circles around their pictures. This one has blue, some of them have orange. So the way it works, and again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here with you. It's all about the relationship between the teacher and the kid, right? When the kid believes that the teacher cares about them, right? That's everything.
That's right.
Now, there's some interesting research around relationships. There's this fellow named John Gottman. He's been studying couples for over 45 years now, and he can watch a couple discuss a disagreement for 3 minutes and with over 90% accuracy predict if they'll still be together in 10 years.
Wow.
Okay, and the way
that's frightening and powerful.
It's very powerful, but it's also super simple. The way he does it is he counts the number of compliments and criticisms that they give each other. And what he found is that couples with a strong relationship, even while they argue, will still give 5 compliments to every criticism.
Wow.
And couples in a weak relationship will give, where they're going to end up in divorce, they give 0.8 compliments to every criticism. Okay,
interesting.
It's a huge gap. It's a huge gap between strong relationships and weak relationships. And I thought about how that plays out in a classroom. because you have kids here who are weak, who are vulnerable, who are insecure, who has an authoritative figure like a teacher criticizing them because they're learning. They didn't do anything wrong necessarily. And then when they do something wrong, how much positive feedback are they getting to offset the negative effect of the criticism? Not nearly enough. So the border colors actually show the ratios. In the beginning, everybody has a gray border. Nobody has anything. If the first thing that's recorded is a down swipe, they'll have a red border. That means that they have more negatives than positives. And it's not to punish the kid. It's to remind the teacher to catch this kid being good.
Right.
This kid needs more positive feedback than the others. And then when it gets back to neutral, it turns orange. When it gets to a 3-to-1 ratio, it turns yellow. At 5-to-1, the border color turns blue. And at 7-to-1, it turns green.
That's so cool.
So you can tell which kids in your class need positive feedback based on 2 criteria. Number 1, everybody needs every day. That's tier 1. And number 2, the kids that are struggling need it more. And you know they're struggling based on their misbehaviors, because when they're misbehaving, it's because they're struggling.
Wow. That is pretty cool.
Thank you.
That is pretty cool and user-friendly.
Yes. Now it gets even better because when you get comfortable with this, you tap on this button here. And now when I swipe up on a kid, I'm not just giving them a general positive feedback. I can actually specify good effort, encouragement, good self-control, act of kindness, good decision. So I get to give much more detailed positive feedback. Again, I can rate the positive feedback on a scale of 1 to 5. When I swipe down on a kid, I get a menu of misbehaviors, talking, unprepared, conflict, disrupted, distracted.
This is great.
Not seated, other. So if Lake here is talking, I swipe down on him, type on talking. If it's super disruptive, I'll rate it a 5. And now there's another part, which is that when kids, are in attendance, when kids are present, when I took attendance before, right, these 2 kids were absent. Kenneth here is late, and this L is going to stay here until I engage him in some way. Once I engage him in some way, in 5 seconds, the L is going to disappear because it's no longer relevant that he was late. We don't need to reinforce that. We need to remind the teacher that they were late until they engage them in some other way. Because you may have like a system where you engage the kids in the beginning of the day. So you know that this kid hasn't gotten any engagement. Okay, now sometimes kids come and they're marked present when they come, but then they leave the room for some reason or another. And there's no record of that in many cases, right? So we have a single swipe for that too. If a kid needs to leave the room, you swipe to the right and you just mark that they left, and it's time-stamped. When you get comfortable with that, you activate that, and now when I swipe to the right, I actually get a wheel. Why did this kid leave the room? Maybe for a medical, went to the nurse, was absent. I forgot to mark him absent in the beginning of the day, went out to the restroom for services, discipline, maybe for an errand, a quick 5-minute break, or maybe he was just plain excused. So if he's out to the restroom, I tap on that. I have this little restroom icon here and his picture is faded. And now the clock is ticking on this kid. I know exactly how long he's out. If I tap on her one time, I know that she's been out less than a minute ago. She left the room less than a minute ago. When she comes back, I double tap and she's back. When he comes back, I double tap and he's back. And I know exactly how much time he's been out of the room.
This is awesome.
Finally, academic. If I ask him a question, swipe to the right, and then I can respond. If he got it right, either it was advanced or basic, depending on how well, they got mastery or just basic competency. If they got it wrong, but we're in the ballpark, I can give them on track. That's some positive feedback too. Other is just another, like maybe they asked a question or some other positive academic contribution, and incorrect is if they got it wrong. So let's say the answer was advanced. Number 1, it counts as a positive interaction towards the ratio. And number 2, that's going to show on the meter as a yellow notch. So I can actually distinguish between those kids that have gotten academic engagement, which is far more powerful. They earned that, it's worth more. And just general non-academic positive feedback. And this gives me the last 2 days of that.
That's great. I mean, that's even like informal assessment feedback. I mean, just
yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That is awesome. How long did it take you to develop that?
Huh?
How long did it take to develop it?
I am working on this now for 8 years.
It's awesome. I can tell. I mean, it's really well thought out.
Thank you. Check this out. When you're done, you leave the class. And now you got the dashboards. There's some more. This is just a quick overview. This is the snapshot dashboard. These are the dates that we're looking at. And again, this is all sample data, so it's not really going to make sense. We're looking at November 23rd through December 3rd, but we can select all the dates. It looks better when you look at more data. Okay, this is the snapshot dashboard. That gives you every kid. You get the border color and the 2-day meter for this class, and an academic icon, behavior icon, and attendance icon. And it's traffic light colors. So if they're doing well, it's green. If they're doing poorly, it's red. And if they're starting to slack off, they're in between, it's yellow. So you can right away identify the kids if they're struggling in any of these areas. You see this every single day.
Wow.
Okay, now you want to drill a little bit deeper. You tap on behaviors. And next to every single child, you have 2 bars. The one on the left are the positive feedbacks. The yellow ones are the academic. The green ones are the up swipes. And on the right, you have the red is the down swipes and the orange is the incorrect academic. So you can see exactly what's going on. If you tap on the bar, you get a pop out with the counts. It's 37 positive, 11 negative, 32 correct, 4 incorrect.
That is awesome, man.
Same thing with attendance. You get the counts of, and it's also, I don't know if you can see the legend. It's up in the corner. It might be, the little thumbnail video.
I can see it.
Okay. So green means that they were present. Red means that they were absent. Yellow is late, and blue is left class. So you get a little pie chart. You could see how many times the counts of the classes and how much time it adds up to, how many times they were present for how much time, how many times they were absent, how much time they missed, how many times they were late and how much time they missed, and how many times they left the class and how much time they missed. Super duper details.
A wealth of information.
Check this out. I tap on these 3 dots here. Every kid's got an individual dashboard too. And this one takes a second to load up. We'll still have time for a podcast, don't worry. Okay, we're looking at Jess Gavin right now. So his picture is here, his name is here. And we're looking at his individual attendance. So of course here I have the timeline. Okay, I'm running from October 16th through December 3rd. Let's bring it in a little bit. Let's look at October 16th through November 6th. Okay, so now that's how I adjust the timeline. Here is a list of every single attendance event with the icon, the name of it, date, time, how much time they missed. Straight through. I can add notes to it by tapping on this little note icon and add a note to it. And I can, all right, and here I've got 2 donut charts. This one is all recorded records. So this is the entire year's attendance event. Okay, the green is obviously the times that they're in class. If I tap on the donut, I get this little legend here. So red is absent. These are all the different reasons why they may have missed. And the bottom donut is the filtered records. That's just what I'm looking at now. So I can see compared to the overall, what my particular time slot that I'm looking at now looks like compared to the entire year. But then I can slide this out. And this is actually a timeline of each day, starting from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. That's when this class is usually held. And the green means that they're in, and the blue represents the time that they left. So I can actually look for patterns. And again, this is random data, but I can look for patterns. If there's a kid that's going out the same time every day, that's going to show here. And I have really super duper details. Now on behaviors, if I tap on the behavior button up here, I get the same idea, but for the behaviors. So I have the same timeline at the top. I'm going to bring this in here because when I record data outside, like what I recorded just now is outside of the timeline of the sample data. Again, here, every single event recorded and plotted along a timeline. So I can see if there's a lot of red, if my intervention's working, it should start to decrease over time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super duper. If I tap on a bubble, it'll bring me to that tile over here. Every event is with the icon, with the name, date, and time, and the rating. And it's all here. The bigger bubbles means that it had a higher rating. The smaller bubbles means it had a lower rating.
And this is, you can do this on any device or just a desktop, or?
You can do, we developed this for tablets because that's the most versatile. It's big enough. It's not a phone. A phone is too small.
Right.
Originally, it was only working on Windows tablets, but now it runs on it. You can download it from on your iPad, from Google Play on an Android tablet, or from the Microsoft App Store on your Windows tablet.
Wow, man, that is impressive.
Thank you.
That is impressive.
And I think that this is going to change education.
I really do too. I mean, it's there's just so many different functions packed inside it. It's all very useful information. It doesn't waste your time. I mean, it benefits the user right away, not,
Yeah.
stuff being done just for central office or just the principal
Right.
like that.
Right.
This
Right.
benefits the user from
Right.
jump.
Right. Right. So you can download this for free, and you get one class. So you could play with the demo class and you can set up one class. If you want multiple classes, so there's 2 tiers. The first tier, the free version we call bronze. Then you can upgrade to silver, which costs $2.99 a month. And if you buy it for the whole year, it's I think like $23 or something like that.
Wow.
Or $24. Yeah. That's our pricing right now. Well,
So who's your target? Is your target market? Are you looking like individuals or
right.
site licenses?
So when we started, we were looking at the site licenses. But where we got stuck was, number one, to get a meeting with the principal and to get in front of the teachers takes way too long. And what we finally discovered after a couple of years of pushing this is that the administration has as hard of a time or harder of a time getting their teachers to use this kind of tool than we do. So it was, we were actually fighting to have a bigger fight. So we redesigned it now where the teacher can download it directly. And that's why we have this low end pricing. This is for an individual teacher to download on their own. They can try it out with one class for free. If they like it, they can upgrade up to 5 classes. So the lower tier is all the same kids across 5 classes. And if they teach different classes and they need for different kids, that's $9.99 a month, or I think like $60 for the year. But the goal is that once we have a handful of teachers within a school, then we go back to the school and we do a site license.
Yeah.
And that's really where the money is, but we can come with already having the teachers onboarded.
Yep. I mean, the proof of concept, I mean, if they're there advocating for it, because that's what they'll do. They'll run to the principal and say, everybody needs this.
Yeah.
Like my teammate wants it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where we're at. My team is 2 people, myself and my partner who actually wrote the code for all this stuff.
Wow.
So we've been working at it. And like I said, I'm working right now, hopefully to put out in the next week or 2, a 10-day training program where, each day we focus on one thing. So the first day is the philosophical overview.
Yep.
How important, I call it the student-focused mindset, and focusing on relationships between teachers and students. And then the next day you set up your own class. I show you how to do that with the pictures, with everything. And then the third day you swipe up. The fourth day you swipe down. The 5th day you are using the real-time attendance tool. Then you learn the single swipe versus the full function. And you can customize that to have single swipe for some and full function for the other. I show you how to do that. The next day we do the academic. Then we get into the charts.
Wow.
And then, and then some other stuff. But that's basically one day at a time. The videos are going to be between 10 and 15 minutes long. And then you get to play around with it.
I think it's definitely the kind of thing that they've got to see.
Yeah.
Working, but man, it's you got a winner.
Thank you. Okay, so that's my background. In a nutshell, I started out as a social worker, and I'm still practicing. That's how I'm feeding my family with my practice. But this was something that I realized early on, is that the teachers are just overwhelmed, and I need a simple way to be able to see their kids in a positive light.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I like that. I also like that. I've seen some apps where you give the positive feedback, I guess you swipe, and then if they get negative feedback, it subtracts from. And
right.
I love that you have it like it's 2 separate things.
Right. They're completely unrelated, because when we contract that I'm going to work for you, and we agree that you're going to pay me a certain amount of money if I deliver, a certain amount of work, like if I'm going to work for however many hours and you're going to pay me per hour, whatever it is, right? If I do that, I deserve to get paid, even if I did something that you didn't like, right? I kept my end of the deal, right?
That's right.
So I shouldn't be losing points.
That's
You know,
right.
now there's a place you can create. There is a place for the token system. I'm not saying that it should never be used. The problem is, you know, from my experience of talking with teachers, most kids don't have faith in that system,
Hmm.
especially the troubled kids. It's not fair. They give up on it
Yeah,
because you're only catching me being bad. You never notice when I do the right thing.
that's right. That's right. It makes a
So
lot of sense.
it doesn't work.
Makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. All
Good
right.
stuff,
So
man.
yeah, thanks. So with that in mind, I'll put on my podcast voice. And actually, the way I've been doing it lately is I've been asking the guests to introduce themselves. So you can introduce yourself, say your name and whatever else you want to say about yourself, and then I'll thank you for joining us. And I'm just going to really ask you how you got into this and what, you know, tell us what you're doing and what brought you into this. What's your passion? You know, your backstory. That's basically the way it
That sounds
works.
good.
Yes. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm Ken Williams. It's an honor to be here today. I'm a former classroom teacher, assistant principal, and school principal. I led 2 different schools through the reculturing process using professional learning communities as our primary vehicle. For the past 13 years, I've been speaking, consulting, and training with schools, coaching leaders all over North America. My areas of passion are the people part of this work, really leveraging the collective expertise of staff to deliver on the promise of equity, excellence, and achievement for all students, regardless of background. So I love helping schools set the stage for building a learning for all culture, set the stage for a mission driven why, really understanding that it's not about the kids who walk in, it's about the talent in the room, delivering on what kids need to be successful at the next grade level, the next course, the high stakes assessment when applicable, and life beyond the K-12 system. My company is Unfold the Soul. I am based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm originally from New York City.
Nice. I'm from New York City too.
Yes, sir.
I'm in Brooklyn right now.
Love it. I was in Brooklyn this past week.
Oh, we should have got together.
I know.
Glad we could do it now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ken, welcome. It's great to have you here. And just to let everybody know that I came across Ken on Facebook. We met on Facebook in the teaching discipline with equity group, you know, in the Hannigan
Yes.
group.
Yes.
That's where we met each other. And I would encourage everybody to check out Ken's podcast and all of his work, because if you're passionate about education, then you're going to love Ken,
I
because his
appreciate it. Thank you.
passion just jumps off. It jumps out of your device, whatever
I
device you're
appreciate
using.
it.
It jumps right out, and it's great. It's positive. It's not just positive. It's, you know, you have this phrase that you say, "Speak to the crown."
Hmm.
Right? That's great. That's great because it respects people. It puts people up on a pedestal. It builds them. And one thing that I have come to realize is that the starting point of building confidence in people is having confidence in people.
That's right.
And your introduction was that in a nutshell. Well said. You know, you're leveraging the expertise of everyone. Everyone is included. This is meant for everyone, and we need to amplify that message. That's a message that needs to be amplified in a world that is so insane and
Yes.
partisan
That's right.
and sick. Unfortunately,
That's right.
this is the message that needs to be amplified and put up on a pedestal.
I agree with you.
Okay, this doesn't matter what you think about anything else. Okay, it doesn't matter what you know, it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from or what you
That's
look
right.
like or what you believe. This is universal, and it benefits everyone. Now, it's easier said than done,
Yep.
obviously. I realize that, and hopefully we could talk a little bit about that. I would love to hear your story. How did you get into this?
Well, I grew up in 70s and 80s, and LA Law was a really popular program, and you had Blair Underwood, a black man wearing double-breasted suits and winning cases, and Corbin Burnson was a white guy winning cases, and Jimmy Smits was a Hispanic guy wearing those double-breasted suits winning cases, and I kind of liked what I saw there. So I decided based on that show that I'd be an attorney, until I ran into a very influential teacher, professor, during my time at Morehouse College in Atlanta, and she simply said, the children need you. And she set me up in a graduate program. I became a teacher, even though I had a finance degree. I got my master's in education, and from day one, just loved it. I realized, looking back now, that I taught with the mindset of a coach. I lead with the mindset of a coach. I coach with the mindset of a coach, and that is about reaching inside and helping people see their talents, gifts, and strengths, and leveraging them. You know, I'm a sports fan in general, and you hear talking about it all the time. It doesn't matter what the weather is. They're not making excuses. They're owning it. And the more you own it, and the more you tap into your own genius and the genius around you, the more we can do. And I find there's way too much of the opposite going on. And I understand why. We don't set teachers up for success. In my mind, we hand teachers a class list with the name of 25 kids and the 15 things wrong with every kid. And I keep saying to myself, how do you expect a new teacher to have any kind of confidence if everything a kid's going to become is based on who they are, what they look like, their zip code, the language they speak or don't speak, the family they come from or don't come from? I'm not saying there aren't challenges out there, but in my mind, and I wasn't the greatest teacher at everything, but what I did have going for me is what I call indomitable spirit. I didn't wonder if I could make a difference in education. I thought I was the difference, and went into it with that mindset. And so every challenge that a kid laid before me, every piece of adversity, every obstacle, I saw as context, not an excuse. Didn't make it easy to solve. Much of it I didn't solve by myself, because once I realized that at the end of my first year, I didn't reach every kid. That's when I learned about collaboration. But man, once I learned about collaboration and being able to leverage the expertise of teammates, I stand in front of my classroom like one of the damn Avengers, man. Just like, who can't we teach? The three of us, like who can't we reach? That's the mindset I have. That's the mindset I took into leadership, and when my classroom became the adults. And so I treated the adults the same way. It's about helping them reach deep inside and bring forth those gifts and talents that are going to change the life of kids. And so I appreciate the compliments you gave. I'm an optimist by nature. I'm positive by nature. However, like a good coach, I poke the bear. I provoke. I think there are lots of folks out there who shout out problems, and they amplify uh, a lot of the inequities that are true, that are going on, but don't often leave you with solution, or leave you so beat down that it's like, can I offer any help anywhere? So when I provoke, I'm a disruptor, I provoke, but I provoke in the service of we leveraging our talents to deliver for kids. That's what it's about. It's not just identifying problems. Anybody can do that, right? Anybody can identify problems. I want to break the problems down, and then I want to look at the talent in the room, and then help schools leverage that talent to achieve excellence for kids and themselves by extension. Because the best way to build confidence is to string together a bunch of small wins that then, convinces your mind that you are, in fact, great.
That's great. That's great. So I want to go back to the beginning. You mentioned that you were planning on becoming an attorney, and then you had this teacher tell you that the kids need you.
Yes.
Now, I can imagine it wasn't that simple,
Right.
right? This teacher must have done something to make you believe in her and in yourself that this was worth changing your career path.
Yeah.
Because you had already gotten a degree in finance.
That's right.
It wasn't like you were in high school and you didn't know, you were starting out. You already had a college degree.
That's right.
And you were set up. You were already well into a path of becoming an attorney, and you got off that train, you got on another train. Okay.
Yes.
So and the reason why I think it's so powerful is because when we think of ourselves, and you said it really, really well beforehand, as the adults in the room, as the teachers in the room, and I tell this to parents that I work with and teachers that I work with, when you're the adult in the room, you have control over certain things. You don't have control over everything, like you said. Also, you don't have control over everything, but if you could identify the things you have control over and focus on those, good things will happen.
That's right.
Right. But we also tend to forget that we were all on the receiving end of that.
Yeah.
Okay. We all had that teacher. Okay. And imagine what our lives would look like if we had a bunch of those teachers.
That's
like,
right.
like we if we're lucky, we had one.
And that's yes, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but that's an activity I do often with schools and districts. And it's a sobering activity to, have folks raise their hands. How many had one teacher that influenced their lives and, in a shape shifting kind of way. And then you get to 3 and you're lucky if any hands go up.
Right.
Right. It's one of those things. And so it was Dr. Gloria Wade Gales. She's a professor at Spelman College, school right across the street from my school. And she is among, I ask audiences all the time, I'm in my early 50s, and I can look back on each decade of my life and identify a small handful of people who saw more in me than I saw in myself. Right. And they invested time and energy in me. I'm talking about aside from my parents and my family were super supportive.
Awesome.
And I ask audiences all the time, who are those people in your life? Just close your eyes for a second. For me, it was my second grade teacher was the first person, Sister Mary Claire. And, she didn't look like me. I've got, when you talk about that handful of teachers, some of them would blend into the holiday pictures on our fireplace mantle, and some would stand out. And Sister Mary Claire would stand out. She was a small Irish woman from Brooklyn, but she spoke it into me in second grade and made me feel like I could do anything. And we're in touch to this day. And she still asks, what did I do? I was like, it's not one single thing. That's not one single thing. And so when you think about those adults who saw more in you than you saw in yourself, the next question I ask is, what did that person challenge you to do? And who did they challenge you to become? Because you often have a moment where you stop and say, why the hell does she think I can do this? I don't know why she thinks I can do this. But that person has become such an influencer in your life, you can't turn away from it, right? You almost do it oftentimes initially to not even disappoint them. And other times it's because of, maybe they see something I don't see. But we have that opportunity every single day when we get in front of kids. And there's, at least in my life, every teacher I've talked with about that kind of impact they've had on me, there's not been one singular moment. It's often a string of moments and experiences. Humbly, I keep in touch with some of my former students on Facebook, and they're 38, full family. And when they, every once in a while, talk about the kind of influence I was, they recall incidents that I don't even remember. I'm thinking I taught one hell of a social studies lesson that day, and we did one hell of a project with all this cardboard and tagboard. None of that ever comes up. It's these other moments. And so we're always on. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. We're always on. We always have that potential to be that kind of influencer. We don't always get that immediate feedback, but that's why we always have to be on. And for school leaders out there, it's the same for your staff, right? The staff just becomes your classroom, and you have to work to become that kind of influencer with them as well. Because I mean, my whole life changed because she spoke it into me and then helped me take next steps. And this is, education is what I was born to do. I was meant to be here, but I didn't see that, but she saw it.
Unbelievable. It's so powerful. And it's interesting that you say how the school leaders have to be that for the, for the rest of the administration, for the rest of the staff. I've had, and the people in my audience are familiar with the app, with the ClassStars app. I talk about it all the time, and I remember a number of years ago, when we were first testing it out in real life with real teachers. And one teacher came over to me and said, he was very upset about it. He's like, listen, you're telling me that I should give all these kids positive feedback. The principal in this school is going to take my dashboard and go over it with a fine tooth comb and point at every mistake that I made.
Wow.
Okay. And I don't get, and they're not giving me this kind of positive feedback. Wow. What am I supposed to do?
There you go.
Right. And I'm like, exactly like you, that just threw up my arms like, You win.
Yeah.
You
You almost
win.
need to create an app for leaders with their staff. Look at you. I don't even need a percentage. I'm just telling you. It's what one of my colleagues and friends, Tom Maney, calls it's cascading leadership.
Right.
You know, when I talk with superintendents, like your classroom are school principals,
Right.
right? And they should be collaborating like you were asking teachers to do. For principals, your classroom are those classroom teachers and other support staff. And for teachers, of course, the classroom is the kids.
Right.
But what we need as adults and human beings, it's no different. It's just the vocabulary becomes a little more sophisticated. That's all, right? And the feedback becomes a little more detailed and a little more sophisticated. But we all need to feel like we have the goods. That's what I'm after. That when I work with staff, you can tell me about your kids all day, but you know, by 3 o'clock, I'm going to know if you've got the goods because that's all I'm concerned with. That where your kids are from is secondary to me. I want to know if the talent's in the room because the best teachers you've ever had, the best teachers you ever hired, the best teachers you ever worked with, you knew they were going to have a successful year no matter the class list they got. Didn't make it an easy year, but you knew they were going to have a successful year because there are some intangibles we've got to bring to the table in terms of this work.
It's amazing. Yes, you're absolutely right. So let's go back to your journey, because I can't imagine, just like, the other story wasn't that simple, that you just got in and it was just smooth sailing. There must have been some. Let's hear about the early days.
Yeah, no question about it. That's yeah, it's ironically that's some of what my podcast is about. I kept a very detailed journal because I was challenged by a mentor to do so.
Right.
And even though I don't like writing, I couldn't let Ellie down. So I kept this journal, and it's the good, the bad, and the ugly of my leadership journey. But early on as a teacher, I'll tell you, I struggled with one of the things I struggled with was likability. Like I wanted to be liked. I didn't want to, cause rift. I used my sense of humor a lot to, mask pain. And what I realized early on is even though I was just 7 years older than my kids that I was teaching, I think my goal my first year was, of course, to teach, but also to be the coolest teacher they've ever had. And and you know, in isolation, that sounds fine, but long term, it didn't get me what I want. In my second year, I realized that becoming that cool teacher is about building those sincere and authentic relationships. And once you have those, man, I could be a what is the I used to say yank their behinds where they need to go, but I should say things like I can be a warm demander.
Right.
It's that's when I realized that building relationships in isolation isn't enough. Everything is about learning. Everything we do is in the service of more kids learning more. And so when I realized that um, building those relationships can be used to leverage their achievement, that was awesome. When I became a leader, that whole wanting people to like me thing also was a challenge for me. And I think that's one of the reasons I went into leadership because I knew I'd have to build a different kind of muscle. And I did. And you have to learn how to not personalize things. And you have to understand what it means to be mission driven. Like to me, it's a primary job of the principal is to hunt, gather, protect, and defend. You got to hunt and gather everything teachers need to get this work done, right? You got to protect and defend the mission you're on. And sometimes that means you've got to provide, constructive feedback or redirect behaviors or introduce best practices or poke the bear before people are ready to poke the bear. I was texting a friend earlier and he's frustrated because he says that, his teachers, eh, they can identify why every single month of the school year is not a good time to start something. And I was like, Don, we played that game for years, right? Beginning of the year, it's like, hey, it's the beginning of the year. And then by October, it's like, hey, hold on, Thanksgiving's coming. And then after Thanksgiving, it's like, hey, we don't want to start that. I mean, it's about to be the Christmas break. And then you come back and it's like, well, maybe you got Valentine's Day coming up. You realize that. And then by April, we got spring break coming. And then there's testing. It's never a good time. And so I had to learn that as a leader, there's a visionary aspect of it, which means you're going to see the dawn before the day. And because of that, some aren't going to see what you see at the very beginning, but my job is to put teachers in position to execute the kind of practice that will yield the results that will then change their attitudes. But in the meantime, I tell principals all the time, your gift card game might take a hit early on. You know what I mean? Like your gift card data for the holidays may drop some. And I had to learn how to deal with that. And I think like anything else, I grew a muscle so I can be positive. I can be encouraging. I like to spoil my staff to death, but nothing gets in the way of what's best for kids. Like what's best for kids comes first. What's best for adults comes second. It's a close second, but a clear second. And so I work to find that sweet spot between being positive and having a real positive culture without it moving over into where we're enabling less than ideal effort and behavior.
You have the boundaries down to a science.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there were lots of trial and error.
Yeah, well, listen, it takes time. That there's no rule. There's no clear rule book about this because there are so many different variables. So even if the rules have so many exceptions to them, but I can just hear, and again, like I mentioned beforehand, your energy is just like jumps right out.
Thank
so
you, brother.
Yes, you've got it. And by the way, with that hat, you are by far the coolest teacher. I mean, it's like
I disappoint a lot of Texans with this hat when they hear I'm from New York City. But I like hats, and I love this cowboy hat.
It looks great. It looks great. It definitely gives you a unique, that's like your,
Yeah, it's kind of my trademark now.
Yeah, it's your trademark. Exactly. That was the word I was looking for. So that was great. So what do you see as the challenges of today? We don't have too much time left. We got to stop at the top of the hour. What do you see as the biggest challenge right now, and how can we overcome it?
Boy, oh boy. So I'll just give you a couple off the top of my head. Oh boy. One is, and this is something I'm working with lots of schools and districts on as we speak, and that is, how do we take care of each other during this time? I mean, I'm a kids first guy, but this is an unusual circumstance. So we got to take care of our adults as well. How do we take care of adults, but still deliver on our mission, right? It's sometimes, and I know teachers are overwhelmed, and I know this is such new learning. I get all of it. I understand it. And I empathize. At the same time, we're open for business. The example I gave earlier is I told one of my friends, hey, go to the hairdresser, ask them to dye your hair that nice dark brown. And then when you look up and you see your hair is purple, are you going to take these? Well, it's the pandemic. Well, it takes a few days to get back into the swing of things like that. I take my car to get repaired, like an oil change, and they put transmission fluid in the crankcase. That's a problem. You're open for business. I can extend grace. I can give more time. I can deal with fewer offerings. But we've got to find a way to be open for business and take care. And sometimes I think we delve into the area of feeling less than lots of hope with this crisis, and almost, I dare say, like we kind of lower the bar and make excuses. So that leads into the second thing that I think is a challenge for us right now is, for 40 years, teachers will tell you, we got too much to teach in too little time, right? You go a mile wide, an inch deep on this stuff. And so we've needed to reduce content for decades. And one of the, what I call gifts of COVID, is that we've been forced to do that. At the same time, we're in an industry that it embraces change like molasses.
Oh boy.
my colleague and friend, my colleague and friend Paula Maker put it best, and she's just a phenomenal school admin, trainer, speaker. When she works with teams now, and everything is based on, hey, these are the things in this content that we deem essential, which means we got to work to make sure every kid gets it, no matter who they are, what they look like, and where they come from. She's like, in this area of COVID, we're going to take let's say you had 18 things that you deemed essential before the pandemic. I want you to cut that in half. Let's look at the stuff that's really, 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 really essential. Cut that in half, and let's get great at that. And so what she's done in effect is help teams take a few things off the plate so we can get great at what's left, as opposed to trying to do school the way it was done pre-pandemic in a virtual, hybrid, face-to-face, social distanced, very cautious environment. So we've got to take some responsibility for changing some of the conditions, like you talked about earlier, that we can control. If we're trying to do school the way it was done in January here in December, we're going to be in a world of hurt. But we know less is more. We know we've needed to reduce the number of priorities we have. This is an opportunity to do so, because 20 things taught half-assed, or we probably should edit that. 20 things taught half well versus
you can get away with anything on podcast.
versus 10 things that are taught to mastery. We're going to get more leverage from that. So I want teachers and leaders to be successful. And listen, we're in the information age. Kids don't need to learn social studies the way I learned it. We're not memorizing, European explorers and talking about the land they discovered. That stuff's, we can find that on this device in 14 seconds. And so let's figure out ways to, less is more, not less expectation,
Right.
but how do we drill down, take some off teachers' plates so they can drill down, achieve mastery. It builds their sense of efficacy and confidence, which of course often gets transmitted to kids. But if we're still in spirals of like chaos and trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, we are in trouble. I mean, I'm not school based anymore. I've had to do the same thing. I've had to adjust my objectives and outcomes. And it's like, all right, I used to be able to cover 5 things well in a person-to-person environment. We're working a lot virtually. Let's go after 3 things and do those things really well, knowing that if they're the 3 right things, they'll have leverage and impact other areas. So those are the 2 things I worry about. I want us to be careful about casting ourselves as victims. I'm super heightened about victimhood. And I want us to be able to take action on things we can't control. You mentioned it earlier. We can't control what happens at home. I don't know what happens when they get kids after school, but from 8:30 to 2:30, like, we control all that. And let's hyper focus on the impact we can have and not get lost in some of the very legit issues that are happening outside the walls of the school, but you can't control them. You can't control them.
Well said. Well said. Wow. Ken, I feel like I can sit and talk with you all day, all week. This is great stuff.
Thank you, brother. We're going to stay in touch, man.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure. We need to talk. And I'm happy to come on your podcast as well if you ever want to have guests or anything like that.
Awesome.
But this is great stuff. Keep pumping away.
Thank you. Hey, can I tell people where to find me, or do you do that?
You could tell people where they can find you, and you'll send me an email with all the links. And
perfect. Well, it's Unfold the Soul, and that's my handle on Twitter. My podcast is the Bless His Heart Leadership Podcast, where I read from my very raw and uncensored journal, and then process today the things I screwed up back then. And my website's unfoldedsoul.com. And awesome. Really honored to be here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Love talking with you. Love that tool that you developed, man. That's a game changer. Teachers, try it. Like, just download it. It's good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we will definitely be talking again real soon.
All right. That sounds good, brother.
Take care.
Take care.